Hey everybody, my name is Paul Leston Jr., aka Boy Green. I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com, and welcome to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/BoyGreen25. And this is a new series we're starting this year where every free agent the Jets signed in the dotted line, we're going to bring an expert from wherever the hell they came from to come on and talk to us more about it. We got a very special guest joining us for this first edition for 2022, and that is Akash Anavarathan, who joins us over from Niners Nation and telling us a little bit more about Laken Tomlinson, who has jumped from the West Coast to the East Coast, hopping over here. But first, Akash, thanks for jumping over, man.
Appreciate you for having me, Paul. Love the enthusiasm. This is the best time of the year with NFL free agency, moves happening constantly. So thank you for having me on. Always glad to talk about NFL.
Yeah, of course, man. So first off, let's talk about the particulars with the numbers here. We got 3 years, $41.2 million, $27 million of that guaranteed. First off, was it a surprise that he being Laken Tomlinson ended up going to a new location? What did you make of the money he received from the Jets?
Absolutely. I don't think it was surprising. I knew that the 49ers valued Laken Tomlinson. He is a good player, solid starter, highly dependable. The 49ers have been ravaged by injuries the past few seasons. He was one of their most dependable players from that standpoint. But at the same time, if you knew Kyle Shanahan, if you know John Lynch, they value tackles and centers more than they value guard plays. They rotated Daniel Brunskill, who was a former AAF player, on the right side. And then Laken Tomlinson, they traded a day 3 pick 4 back in 2017. And they kind of hit, they struck gold with Tomlinson because he just developed into such a good player. But I never thought they would overpay to keep Tomlinson. And early in free agency, it was pretty clear that Tomlinson was going to get interest from, teams that needed an upgrade along the offensive line, the Jets being one, Bengals, Dolphins, teams that had a lot of cap space, teams that needed, veteran players. And the 49ers just couldn't compete with that market, just given their salary cap situation and just how they valued the position. So not surprised. Happy for Laken Tomlinson, just a true professional, and glad to see him earn that contract.
A quick detour on what you just said. That's fascinating. That, again, for the 49ers, to your point, that they value tackle and center play a little bit more than guard play. And then you see what Saleh has done just in his first 2 years here. He traded up for Elijah Vera Tucker in the NFL draft, and now he just threw the bag, relatively speaking, at Laken Tomlinson. Is he, rebelling from the 49ers schemes? I'm making my own thing over here in New York. What do you make of that with that same theory you just said with what they're doing over here in New York?
I think the difference is that in New York, it's a Joe Douglas operation, right? Joe Douglas is a general manager. I believe he has roster control. And so there's a mixture of philosophies there, where in San Francisco, it's a coach-led operation from Kyle Shanahan. And, it's his philosophy that gets sort of, passed along in terms of roster management and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not sure it's Saleh rebelling or anything like that. I do think they probably wanted Tomlinson, A, because he's a good player, B, because you get a little bit of that 49ers culture coming to New York, and Saleh now has someone that he can rely on in the locker room as a veteran leader, with the Jets being a younger team. So I think it's a combination of that, not necessarily, an opposite philosophy.
Well, let's talk about that culture for a second, because it was interesting when any head coach gets an opportunity, comes to a new team. Normally, they drag a bunch of people with them. A lot of us Jets people, we're that crazy wall scenario, right, where we have all these rubber bands. Just Richard Sherman, maybe that's a guy. Or we're looking around trying to figure out what 49ers guys are coming over, and really, it was somewhat minimal. I mean, there's like a Tevin Coleman here and there, but there really wasn't that overwhelming presence of players we thought were going to come over. But now maybe we're seeing it delayed a little bit a year later. How much can Laken Tomlinson speak to that? Because I think the interesting thing about kind of his trajectory is with the Lions, things weren't really working out. And, after being traded over to the San Francisco 49ers, the scheme and culture and everything really saved his career.
It's funny you mentioned that because last season the 49ers had quite a bit of free agents, especially on the defensive side of the ball. DJ Jones, nose tackle, who's now a Denver Bronco, Kwaski Tarp, back-end safety, K'Wan Williams, the nickel corner, Richard Sherman. They just had a ton of free agents, Emmanuel Mosley, Jason Verrett. And so there was this notion that some of them were going to follow Robert Saleh to New York, and I don't think any of them ended up following Saleh. A lot of them ended up re-signing in San Francisco on these one-year deals as a result of the salary cap kind of falling. And so that probably goes to show how much, control Joe Douglas has over the roster. And I'm sure they're working in tandem, but it's not necessarily Saleh that's leading the way, because I'm sure if he had his way, he would have brought a lot of those guys over, because a lot of those guys loved Saleh, vice versa. And he's trying to implement a similar scheme. He brought some of the defensive coaches with him. So it's more of that. But back to Tomlinson, he's been there since 2017 with the 49ers, since Shanahan and Lynch took over. Martin Mayhew, the former general manager in Detroit who drafted him, was an assistant GM or on the personnel staff here in San Francisco in 17 when they traded for him. And he just became a productive player. I mean, he played over 6,000 snaps. I think he only missed a handful of games in his 5 seasons here. And he was just a dependable player, and someone that I thought the 49ers would extend last season, maybe on the cheap. But once he hit free agency, I had a feeling he would walk. And now he, good on him for getting over, $10 million annually and that $30 million guaranteed, I believe.
All right, everybody, make sure you stop what you're doing. Hit the thumbs up on the video. Make sure you hit subscribe as well for more great content. And why don't you show some support for Akash Anavarathan for coming here on the program, if you will. That would be fantastic. And let's go over to this. This is a quote from Connor Hughes of The Athletic shortly after Laken Tomlinson signed, from a source of his. They said that Laken loves football, extremely athletic, and a nasty son of a bitch on the football field. I quote, what do you make of that? And is that true? Does he bring that kind of, chutzpah to the football field?
He does. He coined the term trench warfare for the 49ers offensive line. And I just think he's a delight whenever he speaks with the media. He's always just a fantastic person, just a professional all around, a good person to have in your locker room, plays with extreme toughness. During the season, you go through all, the all 22 every week. And I personally love watching the offensive side of the ball, and the 49ers love to run the ball. So you really focus in on their offensive line, their fullbacks, their tight ends, and how they block. And Laken Tomlinson just plays with such a mean streak in the run game. Just an all-around good player. And I agree with that Connor Hughes tweet. Just a badass. And I think the Jets offensive line just needed a little bit of a boost for Zach Wilson, and they get that with Tomlinson.
A big question for a lot of us coming out of here, and why some people question whether or not the Jets would even dip their toe in the water, is Laken Tomlinson has predominantly played left guard in the NFL. So the Jets went, well, we got Elijah Vera Tucker. He looks pretty good. Well, why would we bring over Laken Tomlinson? Because, this isn't Madden. We can't just start flipping people all over the offensive line to fill the necessary hole that is available here. Is that a big deal? It didn't seem like that from Connor Hughes and others. They say, oh, no problem. He's just going to flip over to right guard. That's where he will be with the New York Jets. Is that a big deal, flipping that position? And will the scheme familiarity based on John Benton and the rest of the 49ers coaches that are over here, will that make that a little bit easier as well?
The scheme familiarity is definitely going to help. Obviously, Mike LaFleur, the offensive coordinator, is with San Francisco. There's some familiarity there. John Benton, who's extremely familiar with the outside zone, wide zone scheme, again, with San Francisco when Tomlinson was there. So he's going to come into the Jets locker room having known a lot of the coaches and having some familiarity in the scheme, which is going to be a positive, as always. I think that's the biggest thing with free agency, is not about necessarily just finding big names to plug holes. It's finding guys that are true scheme fits, and Tomlinson fits exactly what the Jets are trying to do on offense. The left guard, right guard thing is a question mark, right? He only played left guard with the 49ers. And he played next to Trent Williams, arguably the best left tackle in football, which is going to make any left guard look better than they are. And now he's going to be, next to Mekhi Becton, I believe, right, at left tackle. So, that's going to be an adjustment, I'm sure. But his leadership, his veteran savvy is only going to make players like Mekhi Becton and Elijah Vera Tucker better. So it's more of an investment in that sense as well, along with the player that you're getting on the field. So I think it's good from that standpoint. I think the adjustment from left to right is bigger than people think, because you're used to taking reps a certain way from a certain side, and now you have to flip everything. It's like if you were writing right-handed, for a certain part of your life, and then now you got to switch and be a left-handed writer, it takes an adjustment, and I'm sure that'll be there. But just given what we know about Tomlinson, I think he's going to make it as seamless as possible.
And again, I think that is just a key point there. That the writing is probably the best example, right? I'm mopey over here with my right hand. I can only imagine what would be happening there on the left. So it will be a bit of an adjustment period there. And I will tell you, the thing that stood out, quite frankly, from Laken Tomlinson when he signed with the Jets, I was like, so he's played with the 49ers during their 5 years together. He played in 6,292 snaps out of 6,294. Apparently, the 2 snaps he missed, according to old Lombardi there from The Athletic, is from a shoe malfunction. So, I mean, durability sounds phenomenal, which, quite frankly, the Jets haven't had in God knows quite some time. What is it about it? Is he just lucky? Does he keep his body in phenomenal shape? How the heck do you stay on the football field for that level of durability, especially at a position where you're banging, bodies with some of the big hog mollies there on the defensive side of the football?
Speaks to his work ethic during the season, speaks to his work ethic during the offseason, staying in shape, especially just like you mentioned, as an interior offensive line, especially in the NFC West, where you're going up against Aaron Donald and J.J. Watt this past season, Chandler Jones, and some really premier defensive line. And it's not like the 49ers have only played, 16 games. They've had 2 deep playoff runs, in 2 of the last 3 seasons. So there's a lot of snaps on that body, and he's held up through it all. So that's a testament to his work ethic and, just his talent that he's able to stay out there on the field. But that was probably his greatest strength, his availability week in and week out. You can constantly depend on him. And like David Lombardi said on Twitter yesterday, those 2 snaps were to change shoes or to tie shoes or something like that. I don't remember what game it was, but I do remember what he's referring to there. So I think the Jets fans will certainly enjoy that.
Yeah, that's absolutely unbelievable. Now tell me, who deserves more credit here? So, okay, again, things aren't going well for old Tomlinson out there in Detroit. Well, okay, it's hard to blame him. I don't know what's been going well out there in Detroit since the Barry Sanders days. But nonetheless, things are going south. He gets traded to the 49ers, and like the goddamn Midas touch, all of a sudden Tomlinson turns into this Pro Bowler. So is it the 49ers? And again, their scheme and everything, hey, we can make anybody look good. Hey, Akash, you come over. You're going to be a Pro Bowl right guard. Like, what's happening here? Or is it just the talent was always there with Tomlinson? He just needed perhaps the right situation and kind of for all of it to manifest.
It's always a combination of the both. I feel like when a player gets drafted in the first round and doesn't necessarily pan out, it's probably a result, of the situation as well as coaching and, the player not living up to their pre-draft potential. And I'm sure that was the case with Tomlinson. And the added benefit he had coming to San Francisco, he got to play next to Joe Staley, who, again, one of the best left tackles that the 49ers have had. And then he got to play next to Trent Williams. So he's had a really, really good partner in crime next to him, which, again, he's going to look a lot better playing next to those guys. And so I'm sure that probably helped. And, getting to reunite with John Benton, like you mentioned. And then the 49ers also added Chris Forster, who's a good offensive line coach. So just better coaching, better situation. And the 49ers asked, less of their guards, like I mentioned, compared to their tackles and centers when it comes to offensive line play. So, lower responsibility, I'm sure, helps as well. But so hopefully that will translate in New York, similar system, similar coaches, and he's able to produce for the Jets at a similar level.
And I got to say, I believe that's what the kids call a first world problem, from Joe Staley to Trent Williams. Not too shabby. We'll see if perhaps the Jets could try to continue that with their own flavor. Mekhi Becton. Akash, before we get you out of here, is there any final nuggets that Jet fans who are starving here, trying to learn more about Laken Tomlinson, is there anything else they need to know about this guy, whether on the field or off the field, before you sign off out of here?
Couple of things. Off the field, he loves his victory donuts. So, Yeah, so with the 49ers, nutrition, food science people, what they do is they'll leave them a little bowl with victory donuts after every game that the 49ers win, of course. That'll say 77/victory donuts, and, often he'll post that on social media. So that's super cool. He definitely enjoys those. If you go back to the 2019 NFC Championship game when the 49ers won, there's a video of him dancing in the locker room with his victory donuts. So If you're in New York, you own a donut shop, there is a branding opportunity awaiting for you. So that's pretty cool.
Okay.
The other thing, he went to Duke, and I believe he was a pre-med major. And
Wow.
I think he has hopes to open up a hospital in his home country, Jamaica, after he finishes playing. So he has hopes to become a doctor after his playing career. So that's really, really cool. So off the field, he's as amazing of a person as he is a player on the field, which is really, really cool. So Jets got a really good one. Jets got a good player on the field, high character guy, someone that's durable, can stay on the field, someone that's going to be a scheme fit. And, I think 49ers fans were definitely sad to see him go. They understand it from the 49ers perspective. They weren't going to overpay, but, I think from the Jets perspective, they get an upgrade along the offensive line and a veteran in that locker room who's going to help establish some of that Robert Saleh culture in there. And it's just going to be good for Zach Wilson. So,
yeah, Akash, before we get you out of here, where can people follow you? Now, you would think to yourself, why the hell would Jet fans follow me? That's who's watching the show. But there is this unbelievable connection here between the 49ers and Jets, which, by the way, I'm sure will open up future interview opportunities between us with all the connections between the two organizations. Where can people follow you on social media, and where can they find some of your work?
Of course. So I write for NinersNation.com, so you can check out what I write over there. You can follow me at Twitter at AKASHANAV. That's where all the magic happens. And yeah, of course, we call out here on the West Coast, we call the Jets the 49ers East, just because they, have a lot of the same coaching members or coaching staff members, and they're trying to implement kind of the same type of offense and defense, and it's all in good fun. So thanks again for having me. Appreciate it. And hopefully we'll get to chat soon again.
All right, there he is, Akash, everybody. Make sure you follow him on all social media. And thanks for joining us here on my YouTube channel.